Okay, poetry lovers, we're back for the second part of our discussion. So if you have taken a look at the first video and you've seen that there are some unusual things that are happening with respect to meter, to rhyme, then I think that when you have so many abnormalities, it is supposed to signal to you that the poem itself then is dealing with that, at least from the perspective of the speaker or the poet. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll switch over here to the view of the poem itself. Okay, so if you were asking me to, as I've asked you to write down in one sentence or two, maybe, what's happening in the poem. Quite frankly, I think that this poem is as much about poetry itself, the way that Wordsworth sees it, as it is about the vision that the speaker has of this maiden out working in the field. Okay, so he is speaking to us as observers then when he asks us to see her there and invites us in. Stop here or gently pass. Gently pass meaning so that that you are not to disturb her efforts. Okay, one of the things that we did not take a look at in the last video had to do with the acoustics that are not metrical in nature. So if we're going to take a look at "Behold her single in the field," I see the H sounds there, but for the most part those are the only two, so we'd say that's consonants. Yon solitary highland lass, so we've got the sibilants of solitary and the S's in lass. Reaping and singing by herself, I've got the S's there. Reaping and singing by herself. Stop here or gently pass. You can tell that the meter change there becomes more emphatic as he is essentially ordering us with the exclamation point that we can see. Alone she cuts and binds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. So again, we've got a lot of sibilants here. Oh, listen, for the veil profound is overflowing with the sound. So the entire octave, the entire stanza, is loaded with sibilants, and so this is euphonious. And if you look at all the sounds in combination, you don't have much in the way of cacophonous sounds. So again, this image of singularity. There she is by herself, cutting and binding the grain, singing so melancholy strain. I mean, it's a sad song that she's singing. And oh, listen, for the veil profound is overflowing with the sound. So this is clearly hyperbole. And also, if you want to take a look at the figurative language, we're going to go through some of these things in combination. So the veil profound, meaning that it's not just a little swale in the earth. I mean, it's a good-sized valley, and since we are in the Scotch Highlands, we would expect then that the peaks are relatively high, and so the idea that you can hear the girl's singing voice filling. Okay, so if we're going to unpack that, then the tenor is the sound of her voice. The vehicle then, of course, is some kind of fluid. And then the valley, so if you want to look at it the other way, then the valley, of course, is something like a container. And the fact that her voice is so loud and full that it is going beyond the boundaries of the valley. And again, this is hyperbole because a single person's voice, generally you have a difficult time hearing it from far away. But perhaps the acoustics of the valley are such that they can concentrate the sound, that might be possible. Okay, so again, hyperbole in the second octave, just to begin with. No nightingale did ever chaunt more welcome notes to weary bands of travelers in some shady haunt among Arabian sands. So think about for the English at the time, things Arabian, things from the Far East, from the Middle East, were in fashion at this time as being super exotic. And so notice the contrast between the exotic allusion that Wordsworth makes here with the commonness of a rural scene, of an agricultural scene. But notice again, as I mentioned in the other video, that it's a woman doing this, and that would be not what you'd expect. You'd expect a man to be doing this kind of work. Okay, so we've got the birds. No nightingale did ever chaunt more welcome notes to weary bands of travelers in some shady haunt among Arabian sands. So this is like the sense of pilgrims, okay, people who are traveling together. A voice so thrilling ne'er was heard. Again, hyperbole. In springtime from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. So the Hebrides, of course, are the islands off the west coast of Scotland. So he's making the comparison here implicitly to, imagine, if any of you have ever been to England, that the winters are long, they're cold, they're damp, and so just like if you'll think back about the Canterbury Tales and how the birds are singing there that have perhaps come back from migration, and their bird song as they seek mates and things of that nature is a welcome thing to hear for people that have been oppressed by the cold and wintry weather. Okay, so again, just consider all the hyperbole in that particular stanza as he makes his point about just how wonderful this girl's voice is, and how that it is more beautiful, even in its melancholia, more beautiful than that of birds being harbingers of spring. Okay, so now the speaker goes into direct address. Oops. And as I said in the earlier video, his attitude is now more emphatic, more urgent. Will no one tell me what she sings? Okay, well he doesn't understand her language because she's speaking. It's Erse, but it's a Gaelic. Gaelic is the tongue, the native tongue of the Scotch, and so he's English, so he doesn't understand it. Perhaps the plaintive numbers or verses flow for old, unhappy, far-off things and battles long ago. This is what people generally, old songs. They're about heroic actions of ancestors and so forth. This should bring you to mind, or bring Beowulf to mind, because you'll recall, right? Beowulf's there, and the king's poet, the king's songster, comes in and sings these ballads of marvelous deeds from the past. Battles won and so forth. And this is generally, okay, part of this goes back to, if you've read carefully, this goes back to what Wordsworth's attitude is about not just poems, but poets. Okay, Wordsworth fell under a lot of criticism for devoting himself to subjects that critics, and maybe the public at large didn't think, or how about the educated public at large, didn't think these subjects belonged in poetry. Poetry is supposed to be high-minded, dealing with grandiose subjects, okay? And yet, here's Wordsworth commenting on, okay, noticing and celebrating this girl out cutting grain and binding it up. And so he imagines the songs could be of these heroic deeds, but then here's where he goes into sort of a direct reference to what he believes is the job of poetry, and that is to speak of everyday things that concern every man and woman. Or is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today? Some natural sorrow, loss, or pain that has been and may be again. She might be singing a sad song about the fact that she's lost the love of her life, or that there's her mother is dead, or her grandmother is dead, or someone that she cares about has passed away. Just a normal human occurrence that is sad nonetheless. It doesn't have to be this tremendous, say, losing effort in a battle or something of that nature. He's arguing for the fact that she might be singing of some everyday sorrow that is nonetheless just as important as epic sorrows. Okay, the events of this girl's life are just as important as the sort of historic events that people might put down in books or make songs about. And so here, whatever the theme, whatever the topic, the maiden sang as if her song could have no ending. Yes, again, we're on the verge of hyperbole here. I saw her singing at her work, and o'er the sickle bending, I listened motionless and still. Now, notice the play on words you have there with the word still. The sense of it being not just motionless, as in without movement, but also when you talk about I'm still here, as in there's an enduring sense of being present. I listened motionless and still. And as I mounted up the hill, climbing away from her, the music in my heart I bore long after it was heard no more. So it's a marvelous idea that he's now stood there and heard her sing, and then either she has stopped singing or he is continues on his journey and travels up and out of that valley that has contained the song. And notice then that through his imagination, the claim that he makes in the opening octave about her song overflowing the valley, which we saw as a container, notice that he now carries the song with him in his imagination, and through the poem, the fluid that was her melancholy song is now in him to spill out in sharing it with others. Okay, so again, this is the power of poetry generally, and this is why, look, this is one of Wordsworth's most famous poems, because again, it is perfectly emblematic of the kind of poetry that he talks about in the preface to the Lyrical Ballads.